I have found that people change for one of two reasons. One is pain, and the other is opportunity. And a few years ago, I had the opportunity to be the vice president of a university, which brought me pain. And through that, about a year into it, I sat down with a mentor of mine and I said, I am struggling. I said, I don't really know how to deal with some of these issues. I got this going on and that going on. And he listened very politely to me for quite a while. And then he said to me something that I found to be profound. He said, look back over the last year. How many of the issues you are currently dealing with? How many of those issues are issues of character? And how many of those issues are issues of competence? And I started thinking about it. That the year prior, the main challenges I had were not about the competency of our people, it was a way of thinking. And I really was embarrassed by it. Because I was still teaching in the graduate program, in the MBA program, and I was teaching on Monday nights, I was teaching leadership, and on Tuesday nights, I was teaching ethics. And until this moment, I never saw the two as connected. And so when I began to see what it could be, and I thought about it more and more, I created a little model, and it's very simple. And the model is basically just this. That if I'm looking at the consistency of someone's life, the consistency of an organization, it is the character of that place plus the competency of the people gives me the consistency. And I realize that many of the challenges that we have at work and at life are not on the competency side. It's not about learning more, it's about what to do. And I started looking at it and thinking, competence, maybe that's the engine of the car, but character is the steering and the brakes. And I realized what I was doing was helping increase the horsepower, but without adjusting the steering or the brakes, I was just increasing the speed at which people were going to hit the wall of life. And so I decided to quit being an administrator and left my job as a professor and started looking at what could be done differently. And I went back to my mentor and I said, how did you do this in your own company? He's very successful in his life as a business leader. And he said, well, our company's been around for quite a long time, but in the late 80s, early 90s, we were struggling to meet payroll. We were struggling to keep the doors open, and we had low morale, and we had people who were really struggling to really get excited about work at all, and we were troubled with this idea of adding more and more and more rules to a handbook, and we couldn't keep up with the creativity of people who were trying to bypass the rules. And he said, we decided to focus on character because it would liberate people. Less rules, more character. If people have character, you don't have to have as many rules. And the company took off. Began to see unprecedented growth. Began to see profitability they had never had imagined before because efficiency went up and risk began to go down. And people started being more innovative and they started being safer. And I said, how did you do this? And he said, well, this was born on a shop floor. This was born in a manufacturing plant. This was used for people who have steel-toed boots and wear hard hats. This was designed for real life. He said, but you can't just talk about character, you have to live it. He said, we had been focused on this idea of character and competence, and a few years into this idea, the market changed, and we lost a huge part of our business. We had a warehouse full of parts and no one who was willing to purchase them or could purchase them. We'd already built trust with our team, so we had to gather the entire factory together and we sat them down and we said, here is our challenge. We don't have orders and we have a warehouse full of parts and we think it's going to be at least a year before we're going to have an opportunity to get the shop running up again. And this is what they said. But we value loyalty. And so over the next year, if you are willing to work at a nonprofit, to serve at a nonprofit for the next year, something that strengthens our community, we will pay you your full salary for the next year if you will do that. Or if you want to work someplace else and they aren't paying you what you're currently being paid, we will pay the difference for the next year. And when the orders come back, we want you to come back because we're trying to create a place that is doing something significant. Do you think loyalty was an issue a year later when they called back? That company right here in Oklahoma City not only became profitable, it's one of the most profitable companies in our state. It is one of the fastest growing companies in our state. They provide a great wage, but they also provide retirement. They also provide profit sharing. They also provide health care. They also provide wellness, and this is a factory. They also have zero debt. And they've gone from $100 million in revenue to $200 million to $300 million. They are projected to be at $500 million in revenue in the next 2 years. And if you ask them why, they would say it's a focus on character and competence. So I began looking at what he was doing, and I got excited about it. And this is what I found. They were focused on a different type of goal. There are two types of goals. One would be a continual goal, a way of doing things, and the other one would be a terminal goal. This idea of the continual goal is a way of doing things where I'm not just talking about the outcome, I'm focusing on the process. And if I only focus on the process, I will get a different, if I only focus on the outcome, I'll get a different kind of process. Continual goal. We found that companies want to change this mindset so that people show up to work and that their work is a part of who they are. Think about this quite a bit, a continual goal, a different way of doing things. And I found that companies want this, K through 12 schools want this. Universities are still struggling with this idea, but not their football teams. Started getting calls from coaches. D1 football head coaches who came in and said, can you come and help us on this? Because the issue we have is not competence. We have to create a climate of character. The challenge at Penn State wasn't competence, it was character. The challenge at Ohio State wasn't competence, it was character. The challenge at Auburn wasn't competence, it was character. And I'll stop there because I don't want to get to this part of the country. Here's what we found. Places that focused on character, they bought into this idea that your job should not define you, but the way you do your job reveals who you are. I wrote that thinking about my grandfather. My grandfather who, after he came back from World War II, he had to take care of his family, so he became a postal carrier. And for the next 28 years of his life, he would put a bag of mail on his back every morning, and he would go from house to house to house to house delivering the mail. And his only claim to fame in the state of Ohio, where he lived, was he was the first postal carrier to wear shorts. He had a killer tan from right here to right here because he pulled those socks all the way up. That was his first job. After he got done delivering the mail, he would then go to the local bank where he was the janitor. My grandfather did not give me a legacy of honors or money. He gave me a legacy that's bigger than that. And this is what I mean. My grandfather passed away 15 years ago, and I promise you this, if I went to his hometown in Marietta, Ohio, and I walked into the bank there downtown, and I went to the office of the president, and I went to the desk there, and I said, hello, I'm coming through town, and I just wanted you to know my grandfather, Glenn Mellor, used to work here. And that man would stand up and shake my hand. Because it wasn't my grandfather's job that was the legacy, it was the way he chose to do it. And I get excited about that. And so I started looking at what can we do, and I started saying, if we want to change things, we have to establish new expectations. We can't just have terminal goals. We have to have more. We can't just say, I want to be this. I want to earn this degree. Because here's what you'll find. You'll find a lot of people who focus their life on getting the degree, and then they realize the degree doesn't give you anything other than a pretty incredible amount of student loans, which I'll be paying for many years. But if you look at the terminal goal, more than this. So we look at establishing expectations, a different way of doing things. Because here's what I believe. If people don't know what we expect from them, they can't succeed. I was having lunch one day. It was one of those surreal moments. I was having lunch one day with the mayor of Kigali, Rwanda. And I've done a lot of work in Rwanda, and I shouldn't say a lot. I've done some work in Rwanda, and we were sitting there talking one day, and she said, in Rwanda during the genocide, there were people who planned to do evil. We must raise up a generation of people who are planning to do good. So what do we want from our companies? Character. We want them to be compassionate. We want them to be innovative. We want them to inspire us to be something. We reestablish the expectations, and here's what I've found in companies. Moving ahead, I want to integrate character into the hiring and the promotion process. This is what we found. People hire for competence and they fire for character. It's very expensive. What if we could hire for character and competence? Because this is what has made America unique. It wasn't that we just had the smartest people. It was a different way of problem solving and thinking. It was the character of a people. So we began looking at how could we do this in organizations, and you start plugging it in, and all of a sudden you find people who will not apply because of this, and you find people who will apply because they really want something like this. Keep on moving forward. Recognize and reward with specific examples. We found this: if you tell a group of adults they don't have character, that's probably not going to be all that helpful. So this is what we would do. We found a way to say this is what character is, and then we said, let's catch people doing it right. You don't create the character police. You create managers who don't just look at people to catch them doing it wrong. They only have one way of doing things. Now I give them another option. 36.1% of people leave their job for a lack of appreciation. What if you could appreciate them for their character? We didn't intend to do this, but what we found is that we had managers at least once a year formally would take an employee and say, this is the character we saw in you. This is the specific thing that you did that inspired us. And they write it up. In some companies, they all give it to them in a little plaque or some type of thing like that, or a certificate. But some companies would put it in a letter form and send it home. You may not know this about your dad, but this is why we value him so much here at work. You may not realize this about your mother, but this is the character we see in them. And this is what we did not anticipate. We were creating their legacy. Year after year after year, another page and another page and another page. Now here's the crazy thing. What would you pay to have 20 pages that told you about the character of your great-grandfather or grandmother? That's legacy. And it works. Companies started saying, hey, we could do this. Again, coming from right here where we live, they said we could do this, and it began growing. And it didn't just change the people who worked there, it changed the people who were leading the organizations. One organization here in our own state, it has grown dramatically since they began using some of these concepts. Through the recession, they experienced incredible growth. It's a large retail store that focuses on hobbies. Through the recession, every month they added one new store. The last 4 years in a row, they've added one new store. While going through the recession, they increased the hourly wage of every full-time employee by $1 per year the last 4 years in a row. They pay 83% higher than the national minimum average. They provide health care. They provide retirement. They provide profit sharing. And I asked their leader why. And he said, because we want the best for our people. He hasn't suffered for choosing to act with character. Right now, their competitors have to bring in $3 to be able to have the same amount of profit that this company gets for spending $1 or earning $1. Amazing. Keep on going. I look at some of these key ideas, and this is what we found. Actions reveal beliefs. If you desire to change actions, you must challenge beliefs. This is why character education is needed in higher education. Because some of you were like me. I went to school to play football. I'd been good in high school, and I could play cornerback where you could be small and fast and play. And I got to college and I was small. And that was pretty much it. I got watch a lot of games real close to the sidelines. I had gone to school with very low expectations. I had gone to school believing that if you made a C, well, why would you want to venture farther than that? I walked into class one day, first class, Tuesday afternoon, 4 o'clock. Dr. D. Carson was the professor. She was standing at the front of the room. I walked in the back door and was trying to make my way down the side of the room so that I would not be seen. This professor looked at me. She pointed at me and she said, "Nathan Mellor, I know who you are." She motioned for me to come up to the front, and I came up to the front. There was a table in between us, and she was a professor that loved students, and she had her finger like this in my face, but she was smiling. And she said this to me. She had her finger in my face, and she said, "I know who you are. And I think you are gifted, but don't know it. I expect you to make an A in this class. This class is not easy. Sit there." Yes, ma'am. I wrote down everything that woman said, not because I was afraid of breaking a rule, but because she challenged what I believed about myself. My competence changed when she changed my character, the way I viewed the world. We've got to have this. You can't have education without this. Otherwise, we produce a number of smart people who have engines that are powerful, but they can't steer. We can do this. It's possible. After my grandmother passed away, I went up to Ohio and we cleaned out all of her stuff and took it all down. And there was one box that I found. It was an old trunk, and I opened up that trunk, and inside that trunk I got down into it, and it was a treasure. It was truly a treasure. I opened up that trunk, and I found my grandfather's high school football pants from 1938. They were clean, but they were. And then I found his high school letter. And then I found his picture. And I got down into it farther, and then at the bottom of it was this almost like a scroll. I pulled it out, and it was thick paper, and it was clearly very old, and I took it over and I put it on the bed, and I opened it up gently because I thought it might be very brittle, so I opened it up very gently, and as I was rolling it up, the name appeared at the top of this scroll, and it come to find out it was a large diploma. And the diploma said, Ben Mellor. My great-grandfather in 1908 graduated with this degree, and at the bottom of it, it said he received this diploma for his excellence in character and scholarship. These are not new ideas. We can do this. And thank you for your time.